Hello, and welcome to Spotlight on Wawarsing. I'm Charlotte Apollo, the director of the Ulster Prevention Council, and I'm here with Megan Conroy, who is our community prevention specialist. The Ulster Prevention Council works to reduce youth substance abuse throughout Ulster County, and here in the Ellenville School District, we provide direct services to students right in the classroom in preventing substance abuse. Today we're going to talk to you about the Ulster County 2017 Youth Development Survey. We've been surveying youth in Ulster County every 2 years for the last 10 years, and so we have some ongoing trend data regarding youth substance use rates and also some attitudes and opinions about substance use, and so we're going to share some of those results with you today. So Megan, can you talk to us about who participated in the survey?
Yes, so for our 2017 results, we had a total of 3,987 students, grades 7 through 12, represented in a total of 5 school districts in Ulster County. So this was 21% of Ulster County students. So we really have a good sampling of the students in the community and their attitudes and behaviors around substance use. So what we're going to present now, and Cheryl's going to start into, is just a sampling of some of the data that we got. And we use this to help plan our strategies, to help other agencies in the community plan their strategies, and we will be releasing this full report shortly on our website.
All right, so one thing that we were very, very interested in looking at this year was our use of opiate prescription pain relievers. This was an area of concern, and most of you, I'm sure, are aware of the opiate overdose epidemic that has been occurring in this area and throughout the country. And so we were really interested in looking at our trending in terms of pain reliever use. A lot of the opiate use, and even leading into heroin use, starts with younger people using some kind of a prescription drug, whether it's prescribed or without a prescription. So we asked students whether they had used a prescription pain reliever without a prescription. And you can see we have some graph detail regarding prescription pain reliever use. And what we can see is that in 2008, about 16% of youth reported using ever in their lifetime, and that's been coming down every 2 years. We didn't ask this question in 2014, but you can see that over time we've come down from 16% to 4.7%, which is a really dramatic downturn.
Yes, absolutely. And
then for the last 30-day use, which really indicates more so how often students are the students who are really abusing on a regular basis, and that's also come down. There's we're down from 5.5% 2 years ago to 1.6, so that's dramatic. So we're really happy about that. And we think that has to do with some of the strategies that have been used in the county to reduce youth. Do you want to talk about some of those?
Yes, so we have, Cheryl had mentioned earlier that we do our prevention strategy in the schools. We're here in Ellenville, our curriculum Too Good for Drugs, which is a 10-week program that we have 2 facilitators in the districts teaching, which has been a really great success. We've also done a number of opioid forums in the community. For example, tonight we're going to be at the Chris Herron story, talking about substance use. So all of these strategies that really take the whole community to take part in we're seeing that it is working, which is really encouraging. So we're excited to continue these community efforts and really stay focused on this issue.
Right. One of the big projects that we did when we first started working in Ellenville was to get a med disposal box at the police station. And so that we've done Lock Your Meds campaigns with students here doing media projects to promote that, and also promoting dropping all of your old unused medication at the police station in the drop box, and it gets disposed of, and that's really reduced the amount of prescriptions that are available for misuse.
Yes, and on our website, ulsterpreventioncouncil.com, we have a map that shows all of the prescription drop-off boxes that are in the county. So that's a really great resource that is available.
Right.
So we'll move on to our next graph.
Sure. We looked at alcohol use, and so again we have looked at lifetime use, how many students have ever tried alcohol, and then we look at past 30-day use. And so we see that it goes up and down a little bit, but in general, alcohol use is trending downward, where fewer students are trying alcohol. In lifetime, right now, about half, just 50% of students have tried alcohol, and we're talking about grades 7 through 12. So more in the older grades, fewer in the younger grades. But, one of the interesting things that we look at is how many students are not drinking. And so that means that half of the students in our schools in 7th through 12th grade haven't tried alcohol at all, which is amazing. It's still higher than the national rate of about 42% of students have used alcohol in a national sample called Monitoring the Future. And so we're able to see that we're a little bit higher than we really want to be still with that.
Right, so that's where we are with that one. We're going to move on to our next. So we asked too about parents' perception and input on the use of substances. So we're asking with this question, what do the students think that their parents think it is wrong to drink? So if they have the perception that their parents think that it's wrong to drink. And we can see here that we have pretty high numbers. Again, this is something that we see as higher in 7th grade and goes down a little bit and is the lowest in 12th grade, but we can still see it's a really high response that parents are giving the message that it is wrong to drink. So we're seeing that represented in the 90s throughout all of the grades. So we'll move on to anything else with this one, Cheryl?
No, I think that's, yeah. Well, this is an interesting question. So we asked students, if your parents found out you were drinking, how would they respond? And so we can ask parents how they would respond, but asking youth how they think their parents would respond, really interesting. So about 63% said, I don't drink, so they didn't give a response to that. About 14% said they were not caught. 8.4% said there were no consequences if they were drinking, that nothing would happen. And 6.6% said minor consequences, and 6.7% major consequences. And one of the things that we know prevents youth drinking is parental attitudes and their communication to youth. So the more that youth perceive that their parents would disapprove and would present a consequence, the more likely they are to resist drinking. So that, we want to see higher rates of kind of, minor consequences and major consequences that are given for drinking.
Right. Okay, so moving on to our next slide. This is something that we're really excited about as people in the prevention field, is the decline of cigarette use. So if you can see here, for our past 30-day use, 96.8 students reported that they had not used cigarettes at all during the past 30 days. And that's something that's really encouraging. That really means that the prevention messaging, and this took a long time, right? The dangers of tobacco is something that's been in discussion for years and years. And it's so encouraging to see that youth today are seeing that message and are not partaking in cigarette use. So we were excited to see these results.
And then we can see too that of students that are smoking, about 3% it's 1 to 5 cigarettes a day. So we're not seeing the really heavy smoking that we've seen in the past.
Again, so it's just another graph for past 30-day smoking. So we can see here that for 2008, we were at 9.7. Again, here in 2017, we're lower than the Monitoring the Future, which is encouraging to see. We're lower than the national average at 4.4%, and these are total students from 7th through 12th grade. So again, these are encouraging numbers. Okay.
Well, when we start to look at marijuana, this is a substance that concerns us greatly. In addition to alcohol, alcohol and marijuana are the two substances that youth typically abuse. And so we can look at our lifetime rates. Have you ever tried marijuana? And that has stayed really steady at about 28.5% over the last couple of years, and is very even with the national rate. So about the same number of students are trying marijuana in a lifetime. The piece that concerns us is when we start to look at past 30-day use of students who are using on a more regular basis. It seems to be creeping up. It's down from a couple of years ago, but still creeping up over time. And that amount is higher than the national average. The past 30-day use around 18%, nationally about 13.7%. And so we're concerned about that. And we think that has to do with medical marijuana being allowed, and talk of legalization and what's going on in other states. And so we look at it in addition to attitudes. But one of the really important things that we look at with that, we look at that number and say, oh, 18% of youth report using marijuana, but that means that how many didn't use? 82%.
Yeah, 82% didn't
are not using marijuana, and that's really important. Sometimes when we ask youth, oh, everybody uses, everybody, especially in the high school years. And so we're able to, show them what youth themselves are reporting, and they're not reporting using. 4 out of 5 students aren't using marijuana products.
Right. So looking at that perception that, like Cheryl said, a lot of times students perceive that everyone's using marijuana or using other drugs, and then really seeing in the numbers that that's not what students are reporting. So a big part of what we do is, that social norming, seeing that it's not everyone that's using drugs. So moving on.
So we looked at parental approval of cigarette use, and we saw that it stayed high. It was in the 90s for all grades. It dropped a little bit toward, senior year. When we ask about, do your parents think it's wrong to use marijuana, we see lower rates than we do for cigarettes. So I think that part of that has to do with knowing about the health effects of cigarettes and the harmfulness of cigarettes. And yet when we look at marijuana, I think that youth and adults are having a more permissive view of marijuana. And that has to do with what we're, trends nationally. Mm-hmm. The important piece to this, and something that we'll be working on soon in a media campaign and working with youth to get the word out, is that marijuana is harmful to the developing adolescent brain. And so for students even up through their early 20s, marijuana is harmful and can affect the structure and the function of the brain, and memory and learning in so many different areas. And so even for people who are looking at marijuana, an adult use and saying, well, maybe it's not so bad, what we know about adolescent use is that it really is harmful and needs to be avoided in order for development to take place properly. So this is a number that's a little bit concerning for us, and that we would like to see higher. So we'll be talking to parents and youth about some of the harmfulness of marijuana for youth.
Yes, and we will give our contact information at the end, but we do have resources for parents to kind of have these discussions, and some talking points, and that go over the health risks and talking to youth about that. So we are a resource for that. So moving on for communication with parents. Cheryl, do you want to talk a little bit about this graph?
Sure. So we asked about whether or not your parents have talked to you about certain substances and their harmfulness. And so we can see in the bottom third of each graph is tobacco use. And so we can see the number of parents who have talked to their children about tobacco use. And you can see that it kind of tends to get lower, as they get into the older grades. But one of our concerns with this is how many then are not having that conversation. The yellow or gold band is alcohol use. More parents, about half, talking to their children about alcohol use. And then drug use, a little bit more than half, talking to students about the harms of drug use. And so we look at that communication with parents and start thinking about, boy, how can we increase that communication that parents have with youth, because they may think that they're communicating that message. When we ask parents, do your kids know that you disapprove of drug use or alcohol use? Oh, parents will say, oh, yeah, of course they do. But when we're asking youth, half and sometimes less than half are reporting that they've had that conversation. And so we do provide resources in having that, discussion with youth around substance use of all sorts, and the dangers and also the expectations at home and the possible consequences. So in looking at our use rates and then that perception of parental disapproval and communication, we can take these results and move forward with, okay, how do we get the word out about some of the things that will help us to reduce these rates even further as we go along?
Yes, absolutely. So let's move on to our next. Okay, so that's actually all of the data points that we have to present. Again, this was a really just brief kind of overview. We have an extensive report that will be released on our website, which is listed here at ulsterpreventioncouncil.com. It has a number of different tables. It goes through all of the questions that we asked on the survey. We had over 50 questions on the survey, so you can see the results from all of the questions that we asked. And then another way to keep in touch with us, we're on Facebook at Ulster Prevention Council. There we'll post events and trainings that we have. And again, another program that we would like to provide education about is the Ulster Family Services Advocate Program. Carol Sutcliffe is an amazing resource in the community for if you have concerns about a family member or friend or anyone in your life who might be encountering a substance abuse disorder. So Carol's information is there. And then again, like us on Facebook, you can stay up to date and you'll get an update when we post the complete survey results.
So thank you for joining us, and we will see you soon.
Yes, thank you.